Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Lefty Agenda. I hope you've all had a wonderful holiday. I know I have. I am currently about 3 alcoholic beverages deep and ready to talk about some fascist bullshit. So today I am talking about a more serious subject that has definitely plagued my mind for the past 4 years, and it's escalated in the past few months. So, real excited to jump into it here. Fascism. A word that probably comes to mind when you think about Nazi Germany or Italy in World War II. Most of my life it was a distant memory from high school history classes, but as I got older and more politically aware and radical, I made some disturbing realizations. I started to notice America falling into some of the same traps that plagued our world less than 100 years ago. But before I get into that, I want to give you a quick review of what fascism is, what causes it to happen typically, and, every fascist movement is different, but there are some similarities that we can take note of. Part 1. What is fascism? As I stated before, every fascist movement looks and grows somewhat differently, but there are some key beliefs and ideologies that we can look for when determining if something is a fascism or not. I'd be lying if I said I didn't take the concept for this list from an amazing YouTuber called PhilosophyTube. Please go check out his video on Antifa and show him some love, because he's one of my favorites on the website. Super awesome videos as well, very informative. Way better than mine, that's for sure. Anyway, this is the list I've put together of some of the key features of fascism. Authoritarian leaders. Nearly all fascist movements believe in an authoritarian leader instead of having democratically elected leaders. This can be a leader who seizes power or one who gets elected and refuses to leave office and takes full power of the government. Belief in conserving an ethnicity or race. Commonly in fascist movements, you will see the belief that a specific race is superior to other races. This can take the form of blatant racist rhetoric, like the Nazis did, or the othering of foreigners as dangers to society, such as Italy and the British Union of Fascists. Seizing or disenfranchising the media. Many fascist movements have fully taken control of all media and journalism as a way of maintaining power. Germany and Italy are prime examples of this happening to its fullest degree. The disenfranchising of media is something relatively unique to American politics, but we'll be kind of getting into that later. Power-hungry leaders that will expand when possible. Fascist leaders will often do anything to maintain and gain more power. Conquering nations is a big part of how they do that. It ties directly with imperialism, but that's a topic for a whole nother video. Conservative/traditional. A true fascist movement is always born from conservative politics. And before you light my ass up in the comments section, I am not saying that all conservatives are fascists. But as you radicalize down the right-wing line of thinking, its endpoint will be fascism. Similarly, as you radicalize down the left-wing line of thinking, its endpoint is typically communism. It's also important to mention fascism has a fondness towards toxic masculinity and traditionalism. If you want proof of this, just look at what Hitler did to the LGBTQ community around him, or notice how only men can join the Proud Boy movements in the United States today. Pro-free market and capitalism. Piggybacking along with my last point, obviously if you are on the opposite side of the political spectrum of communism, then you are a free market capitalist, typically. Hitler was known for widely hating communists, and I know what you may be thinking, but lefty, why is this called the National Socialist Party then? That would be a fantastic question to ask, because just like my mental state, my high school education continues to fail me every single day. The Nazis actually named themselves that to trick the left wing into thinking they were progressive socialists to gain more political power, before having all of them imprisoned and killed. Super fun story. Also, it's widely known that the Nazis did privatize many industries after they did take power. Pro-police and pro-military. When you connect all the dots of imperialism and toxic masculinity, it becomes clear that in fascist ideology, you see adoration for the military and the police. Many fascist movements have a set of secret police or enforcers that take to the streets to rough up the communist and the Jewish folks that didn't fit in with their plan. They all wore a specific color of t-shirt, which kind of makes it funny to look at, and not all of these are necessarily formal police, but these are the aggressors that were typically used. In Italy, they had the black shirts. Germany had brown shirts. Ireland, blue shirts. Even the United States of America had the silver shirts. I just think it's kind of funny how if we have enough fascist movements, we can eventually make a full Crayola crayon set of genocide, which sounds very fun. Part 2. What causes fascism? Looking at some of the similarities between fascist movements gives us a point of interest to focus on. Fascism aims to redirect the anger of economic inequality at people of different races versus the ruling class. This is most likely why it is preferred by conservative capitalists. If you can divert the anger of the public and harness that anger at a minority, it can keep the public from being able to address the true problem, which would be corporations and the upper class, the 1%. In Italy, right before the rise of our good friend Mussolini, there was widespread economic inequality, causing workers to strike and demand better working conditions and pay. This led to mass starvation, and on top of the strikes, many veterans were coming back from the Great War with nowhere to go and suffering from immense trauma. The public services and railways collapsed, and Parliament did absolutely nothing to help the common people. This left a gap for a very charismatic leader to break onto the scene, promising a better life for the common man. If you haven't guessed yet, that would be Mussolini. Germany suffered severe economic inequality after the Great War as well. Hyperinflation at its worst, and Germany taking a lot of the punishment from the war. This, of course, opened the door for another charismatic leader by the name of Hitler. It is interesting and relevant to point out that many Germans knew about Hitler's anti-Semitism and turned a blind eye because of how authentic he was, and the belief that he would never follow through with what he planned to do. It was just a joke. He's not serious about all that stuff, right? Hungary as well had a fascist phase because of poverty, and that struck them after the Great War also. My point here is that most fascist movements that are successful are born out of a time of economic uncertainty and inequality. And don't get me wrong, economic inequality is terrible, and I'm no bootlicking billionaire sympathizer. But the key to fighting fascism is to know who your enemy is. Do not let a fascist leader trick you into believing that economic equality is because of race. Buying into hate-filled pro-us, anti-them rhetoric will eventually lead to a place that we should never return to. In Mussolini and Hitler's case, the establishment did nothing to improve the lives of the average citizen that would eventually fall for the hateful preachings of fascism. And this is what worries me most about the current state of my own country, the United States of America. Part 3. Why should we care? Now, I know you are all very smart people and you can probably see where I'm going with this, but for anyone who is still missing the point, I think America is on an ever-creeping path to becoming what we fought against in World War II. And I think that it has to do with Donald Trump. Obviously, fascists have hung out on the dark corners of the internet for a long time, and that's been a huge influential role in why so many people join the alt-right. But Donald Trump was able to rally fascists together under the umbrella of hateful rhetoric and policies, whether successful or not. And not only did he reach out to the fascist end of the right wing, but also into the more centrist end of the right wing, or the more moderate end. From beginning his campaign on the ideology that we shouldn't allow immigrants into our country because they are rapists, to the disenfranchising of journalism, and his radical followers' refusal to accept that he has to leave office after losing to Joe Biden. And I'm in no way saying that I don't think that there is any problems with the journalism or the news system in America, but when I say fake news and when Donald Trump says fake news, I think we mean different things. To answer a glaring question you may have, no, I do not think that Donald Trump is a full-blown fascist. I think he was a man with extremely conservative political ideologies that approached the line of fascism. What I do think that we are seeing is the normalization of hateful rhetoric that fascists use. We don't hear many people calling themselves Nazis or fascists anymore, but we do see people identifying as nationalists, and that is very similar, almost identical rhetoric. My point with this entire video isn't just to vent my fears and frustrations about fascism, but also to warn my fellow leftists and left-leaning friends. You probably already know these kinds of things, and this also goes out to neoliberals and anybody who is politically aware. I just want to make my opinion and my voice known. We have entered a period where the current president and establishment is wanting to maintain the status quo and get things back to normal. And even Carl Schmitt, a prominent Nazi philosopher, stated that liberal societies are so enamored with the idea of free speech that they often let hate speech fly unreprimanded. Neoliberalism results in a continuation of corporate greed and income inequality because it promotes the idea of the free market with no government intervention. To reference a study I used in my first ever video from the Pew Research Center, economic inequality is at a record high. We on the left can take this time to work on spreading awareness to better help the people struggling under this inequality, but the far right will also continue to chip away at the working class with lies of fascist propaganda. We cannot let our nation fall into the trap that fascist ideas and ideology are the place to turn to. I don't claim to have all the answers to every question, but I do know that fascism is not the answer. And as we creep closer and closer to it, I fear the next egomaniac who wants to try his hand at running the country with an iron fist might be worse than Donald Trump. It is not people of other races or genders or sexualities that we should be fighting against. We are all people who have found ourselves in a lower class being oppressed by a higher class. Your fellow workers are not your enemy. I would like to leave you with this quote from Madeleine K. Albright, who wrote the book Fascism, A Warning, which is a big source for the majority of this video. This was how 20th century fascism began, with a magnetic leader exploiting widespread dissatisfaction by promising all things. Don't let your dissatisfaction be exploited. That's all I have for you today, friends. I appreciate you listening to this video if you made it this far. If you like my channel and what you hear, I love making videos and more just getting things off my chest, to be honest. I'm pretty relatively politically aware. But yeah, please feel free to subscribe and leave a like and a comment. Let me know if there's something you want to hear a video on. I would love to talk with y'all, and have a great rest of your day and a great new year.